All right, let's now turn our attention to Europe. The role of the central banks there in the debt crisis, and I want to bring in also UBS trading losses. My guests are Douglas Borthwick, Managing Director and Head of FX Trading at Faros Trading, and also we have with us Bloomberg contributing editor Bill Cohan. He's also the author of The Last Tycoons, House of Cards, and most recently, Money and Power, How Goldman Sachs Came to Rule the World. Gentlemen, good to have you with us. Bill, I wanted to get all three books in there because you've done this triptych of what's going on. I just want to start off, if we can, let's see the generally Europe for a second. I want to start off in the UK, in London. An arrest today in a case having to do with a $2 billion loss at UBS, Switzerland's largest bank. How does a bank let anybody lose $2 billion and then claim that we didn't really know anything about this?
Pimm, it just defies all logic at this point. It's just incredible. I mean, if it happened, 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, but in the wake of Dodd-Frank and Basel III and all these other regulatory regimes that are coming into place now, it just is very hard to fathom how one trader can get a hold of so much money in a trade that they're not, quote-unquote, his bosses aren't aware of. The bosses tend to be aware of these trades when they're making money, but when they lose money, the bosses aren't aware of the trades. That is typical Wall Street fashion. It's absolutely unfathomable to me that somebody could lose $2 billion in this particular day and age, and people not know about it.
Douglas Borthwick, all right, I know that you're an expert when it comes to Forex trading. We know that that's a very big market. Maybe mistakes can go on there all the time. But in your experience in the financial industry, $2 billion is still a lot of money, right?
$2 billion is a lot of money, and the way you lose it is by having the wrong trade on. I think that it's absolutely astounding. I think in the currency market, it'd be very hard for an individual to do that at a bank, given that most of the time the individuals in the bank trading for currencies are really sort of getting into the trade and getting out immediately. So it's not something you'd hold for that long, but this would require a significant amount of leverage that I don't really see happening on a foreign exchange desk.
And I'm just curious, in the sort of technical apparatus of a bank, there are supposedly adults supervising each other, walking around from trading desk to trading desk, checking people's P&L statements, profit and loss statements at the end of the day.
There should be a number of compliance issues and people that should look at each and everyone's position every single night.
I have written about Goldman losing billions of dollars in 1994. They described Goldman trading in London at that time as the Wild West. I can almost understand it because those days seem so quaint and far away. But, since then, Goldman has been very rigid about their compliance, and having people with very high amount of power, on the trading desk can stop that kind of investment. I don't see how a firm like UBS, which supposedly has turned around its business, has got the message after 2008, was already reeling in its investment banking business anyway, trying to rebuild that, then suddenly has this kind of a loss from one trader. It really does seem mind-boggling. I'm sure there's a lot more to come out, and I look forward to hearing it.
Well, we don't have any details from UBS or indeed from the police of the City of London who made this arrest, but one of the things the bank did say is that this was not clients' money.
It's incredible.
So whose money is this? The bank's money, supposedly?
Well, if it's not clients' money, it has to be the bank's money.
I thought this whole idea of proprietary trading...
The Volcker rule was going to stop all that. Now, technically, they're in London, so maybe, and they're a Swiss bank. Does that make them somehow free of the Volcker rule and its implications? And, it still hasn't been fully regulated and implemented yet.
Explain for people that may not understand exactly what was Paul Volcker, former central bank chief of the United States. What does he want?
Well, essentially, he wants banks, Wall Street firms, which, UBS is one, let's face it, to stop trading with their own money, to stop making big proprietary bets. One way they do that is through limiting the amount of private equity money that they can have of their own in deals. Another way is through limiting the amount of money they can have on a prop desk. And it's unfathomable to me, again, that $2 billion can be lost in this post-Dodd-Frank environment.
Douglas Borthwick?
To be honest, this doesn't sound like it's proprietary trade. To me, given the age of the individual, it sounds that there was a mistake that was made and perhaps put off for months and months and months, and then the losses began to grow and grow and grow. I think that's probably what we'll end up finding, sort of more like the Bearing situation, where there's a loss, it's sort of hidden in some way, and then one day when it's found out, it's a lot bigger than it was. Maybe it was in the money one time, but the guy didn't know how to unwind it. We'll find out, obviously, the next few days.
So you're saying just a trade that he was doing sort of on his own that got out of control?
Right, certainly.
All right, we're going to talk a little bit more about it because I want to bring in the idea that, all right, this happened at UBS in London. what would have happened to the markets today if this had happened to a European bank? Because we know that European banks, they were all looking for dollars. The European Central Bank came through. We're going to continue the conversation. What happened today at the European Central Bank? Did someone get on the phone to Ben Bernanke in Washington and Tim Geithner and said, we need dollars. Give us some dollars?
Well, they clearly have to make it look like they have a united front now. It's been too shaky over there, too much nervous making, and they've got to present a united front. And finally, again, but every week I hear this claim, and every week it sort of falls away a few days later. And then the markets collapse, and then we have to reinstill confidence again, which is not a good way to go about it. Markets are very, very nervous.
Careful. I know that Doug he's been writing that he's going long the euro, so I want to get your perspective here. What actually took place, this coordinated effort with central banks? Something about lending
the lines
dollars.
have already been in place, and this must have been decided upon 3 or 4 days ago. It takes quite some time for so many nations to really get involved. Remember, it's the ECB, the SNB, the BOJ.
Right. The Swiss National Bank, the Bank of Japan,
the European Central Bank, and the Federal Reserve Bank.
And the Federal Reserve Bank. What actually happened?
Well, the U.S. has now said, we'll give you an unlimited, essentially, line of credit in dollars. So if someone needs dollar funding in their country, it can now be given. Now it's given to the ECB, and the ECB can now offer that to all the other central banks and other banks in the European region. So now,
why do they need it? Why is there this shortage of dollars? I mean, if you're a bank in Italy and you've got customers and you've agreed to supply them with lending,
doesn't necessarily mean there's a shortage of dollars. But if you own dollars there right now, you may want to keep them rather than lend them out. And now, if it's awash with dollars, well, you can lend them out. And so it sort of opens up the gears a little bit. But we believe that what happened today, and we've been talking that something large would happen for a week now. While everyone's talking about default in Greece, we've been looking at, we've been listening to the central banks, we listen to the IMF, and there's a lot of chatter there. Much as the CIA will listen to chatter for Al-Qaeda, we listen to chatter from central bankers. And we've been saying something big is happening. We believe what happened today is the amuse-bouche, the appetizer to what will happen going forward. We believe that the IMF is working on something significant along with the BRIC countries. India has already talked about attending a meeting yesterday with the IMF for an EU package. Brazil has talked about an EU package. Rousseff herself has brought that up.
Well, there's a meeting of BRIC foreign ministers going to take place in Washington, D.C. next week.
Right, and this is all discussing the EU. But on top of that, there's also discussion of a TARF-like fund that would be set up towards helping out Europe. There's also a lot of indications and chatter we're getting from local central banks. So Portugal's central bank today was given more authority by the Portuguese government to allow them to intervene in other products. Well, what are other products? Well, we would say CDS, credit default swaps.
Right.
But not only that, there's also been a lot of discussion from Schnabel, who's talked about his discuss with OTC instruments. Well, that's credit default swaps.
And then Schäuble, he is the
finance minister in Germany.
Finance minister of Germany.
Yesterday, the finance minister in Austria also was talking about her discuss with speculators. We believe the Achilles heel right now in this debt crisis is the long position that's sitting in the CDS. And we believe if there was a way that the ECB or local central banks could then sell CDS, write CDS to owners, then we believe the CDS would collapse. And we believe that no one's looking at that right now, but we certainly believe that there's a trade there in that, instead of when you buy a bond right now, when the ECB buys a Greek bond, they buy it from an insurance company, and that insurance company then has to mark-to-market a loss. Now, if instead of doing that, they wrote the CDS in Greek, a Greek CDS, and they wrote it, and the speculator was to buy it from them, the speculator is signing a check for $5.8 million today to the ECB, saying, I believe that you're going to default on Greece. It's sort of looking, when you look at someone's whites in the eyes, it's much harder to do a trade when you're writing that $5.8 million and you're looking at the guy that's in charge of it. And so we believe a direct relationship, looking in the eyes. Because you can take that $5.8 million up front and you can go turn around and just buy the local debt. And essentially, you can use CDS to fund purchases of local debt. And essentially, after a while, the debt disappears.
Bill Cohan, I want to give you the last word. Do you think that this is possible? You think that this could really...
I'm spellbound by
what do you think? Another book, maybe, huh?
Yeah, I'm just, it's just gotten so intricate, how interconnected everything is. You just can never get away from it. As hard as they try to make things less connected, you can see what's going on in Europe now. It's like a rope team on the side of a mountain, and they have to help each other out.
All right, gentlemen, I want to thank you very much. As always, appreciate your insights, appreciate your appearance. Bill Cohan joining us, Bloomberg contributing editor.
Thank you.
Excellent trio of books. Lazard Frere, Bear Stearns, Goldman Sachs. Read them, you'll know everything on Wall Street. Douglas Borthwick, thank you from Faros Trading.